Today marks my first video of 2021, and you may be asking, why do you have one red eye and one green eye? Well, the reason is because today is the day that I will be sharing my Game of the Year of 2020, Hades. Before we get started, if you like this video and you like my content, please feel free to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more. Hades is a game where you enter the underworld, fight, die, repeat. It's that and so much more. Developed by Supergiant Games, which is the indie company that created games like Bastion, it was released in 2020 and released for early access in 2018. In the game, you're Zagreus, son of Hades, and you've decided to leave the underworld. Until you die, repeatedly, and have to start over again from the beginning. Hades is a roguelike game where you enter procedurally generated dungeons, fight as long as you can, and then when you die, it's permanent and you have to start from the very beginning. Unlike traditional roguelike games, you can purchase upgrades over time so that each run gets a little bit easier. You can even go back to Hades and start decorating. I mean, gold looks so good in the hallway. Once in a while, you may even be able to heal even just a little throughout your dungeon experience. I've never been so relieved to see a hero in fries. As you progress, you eventually meet a colorful cast of characters and you build relationships both with them and between them. And because of the decoration mechanic, some of the rooms and dungeons throughout begin to change the more that you play. I found that the world, despite being made of procedurally generated dungeons, is even pretty unique. In contrast to Dark Souls, where you fight and die and do things over again, in Dark Souls you get the strong sense that the world remains unchanged despite your involvement. And Dark Souls reminds you that no matter what, the world is always bigger than just you. But in Hades, it's a little bit different. The world is certainly bigger than just you, and the characters have their own lives beyond just you. But at the same time, you can start to improve connections and improve the world that you're in, which leads to a very satisfying experience, in my opinion. The cast is one of the breakout best parts of the game as well, because you get to know most of the Greek pantheon in a super believable and charming way. It doesn't hurt that every single character is, whew, who needs breathing? In fact, really early on in my playthrough, where I really didn't know a lot of the characters very well, I asked my Twitter which Hades character I reminded them of, and a lot of people said Megara, which I didn't really understand why at the time. I mean, I don't know what they're talking about.
Or I can send you home the painful way.
But now I'm very flattered. Some of these characters even took me by surprise the more things developed. I'm going to try my best to spoil as little of the game as possible because I do think that the less that you know about Hades going in, the better. But one of the characters that I was super pleasantly surprised to meet was actually Sisyphus. In the Greek myth, Sisyphus was punished in the afterlife by being given a great big boulder that he was supposed to roll constantly up a hill. Right when he got to the point where it would roll down the other side, instead it rolled back and he had to begin right at the start again. It's a Sisyphean tale where you make as much progress as you can, and sometimes right when you think that you're at the end, boom, you have to start at the beginning again. And what starts as frustration sometimes when you're playing ends up being a kind of addiction. You can't wait to dive in yet again and see how far that you can get. In 2020, it was actually hard for me to start playing any of the games that was released that year. In the very beginning to the middle of the year, I was working in healthcare technology. So of course, when events of 2020 started to really hit and impact us, I was working way more than I can start playing games. And then when the inevitable happened and I found myself with a little bit more time on my hand later in the year, I went ahead and thinned out my gaming backlog a little. But then finally in the fall, I went ahead and picked up a bunch of 2020 games, and Hades is still the clear winner. As of the time of filming this, I'm actually stuck on the final boss right now. I got to their second phase, and I'm currently working on just getting through it. In order to truly beat the game, you have to beat the game 10 times, which seems so daunting at the beginning, but people do assure me that it does get easier and better over time. And even now, completely stuck in the final boss, I can't wait to continue diving in, developing the story, and getting to know the cast of characters a little bit better. And even so, me being at the very end of the first play of the game, Hades is an absolute clear winner among the rest that I've played from this year. I would be remiss to not discuss the astounding music composed by Darren Korb. I think one of the strengths of all of the Supergiant games is the soundtrack to each. I never played Bastion, but I actually owned the soundtrack. That's how much I loved the music, and Hades is absolutely no different. One thing that I absolutely love about Supergiant Games is, number one, they seem to treat their staff really well, and two, they find people that are so incredibly multi-talented that you wouldn't be surprised to hear that the QA tester did 5 different voices in the game. And that's the same with Darren Korb, the composer. He not only composed and played much of the music, he was also the talking voice of Zagreus, the main character, and the singing voice of Orpheus. Darren himself describes the soundtrack as Mediterranean prog rock Halloween music, which I can get behind so easily. Even just listening to the soundtrack really affects me, which I think is one of its strong suits. Games like Nier Automata also do that to me. Without even having played the game, I listened to the soundtrack first, and that was one of the deciding factors of me playing. And over time, the game just gets better. Not to spoil it for anybody, but the more that you play, the more that the character development unfolds and it surprises and eventually moves you. And I think any game, even if it's a complete masterpiece, certainly has elements to critique. This game, I think the only thing I really can critique is the fact that sometimes the repetitiveness does get frustrating. When I was about halfway through the game and stuck on one of the earlier bosses, I couldn't even fathom going back and beating it 10 times. Even though eventually now I've definitely overcome that hurdle, but certainly there are times when you just want to put down the game, take a deep breath, and really take a break because it does cause frustration. Another critique I have is that the game is very much dependent on RNG. On some runs you get better god boons and upgrades than others. So in that way you have to rely on luck a fair amount of the time. That being said, taking in all of my thoughts on this game cumulatively and keeping in mind that this is still an independent game, I would happily give this game a 9.5 score out of 10. In 2020, we've had some excellent games, but we've also had some massive disappointments from AAA developers. And with the incredible feats that Hades was able to achieve, along with its smooth gameplay, excellent cast of characters, and riveting story, I think that it was able to achieve something that a lot of AAA studios didn't this year. It has endearing characters, excellent storytelling, and absolutely stunning music. I would recommend Hades to basically everybody. I think the only requirement is that it does require a little bit of patience. Did you get the chance to play Hades this year? I'd love to hear your thoughts and what you thought about the story, the music, etc. Feel free to comment if you have a strong opinion on it, and I would love to see you in the next one. Again, be good to each other and have a great day, guys. Bye-bye, and happy 2021. After 10,000 years, I'm ready to start filming. I thought I said in my notes, enter the underworld, fight, dick, repeat. Like that would be, I mean, that's pretty accurate. And in the Greek myth, Sisyphus